Okay. All right. So welcome back again to System Administration, CSE 313. So what we're going to be doing today, so the syllabus has that we're going to continue, we would have continued our discussion on help, but as I've looked back through the help documentation some more, I do want you to be aware of it because a lot, just be aware of how you can use Linux help to get access to helpful information for commands you may want to use or how they can be used, stuff like that. But I also understand that we also have access to Google and to other search engines and stuff like that to be able to get some of those help as well. So what I want to do is I want to focus on doing the text documents, how to create, view, and edit text files, specifically using Red Hat Linux or CentOS. All right. So what we'll do is we'll get right into it and share, because there's some interesting stuff in here that's that I want to get into today. Okay. So what we will do is we will talk about how to create, view, and edit text files, specifically in the Linux environment, but really what this is going to be helpful for is how to do it using command line commands. So many of you probably already know how to create, view, and edit a text file using a Windows-based system. So like Windows or Mac or even Linux with a graphical user interface. But sometimes we may want to do lots of things very quickly. We want to copy whole batches of files from one place to another, be able to take an output from a command, maybe like a log file, like we may want to create a command to show all the users on the system, for example, and we want to create a text file out of that information to be able to send that to someone very quickly so they can see it. And if we were to do that in a Windows-based system, like a graphical user interface, then what we would do is we would have to go somewhere and list all the users. We might have to go through a command line prompt to do that. We could go to a window to view all the users or view some statistics on the users. We'd have to highlight all that, copy it into a text document, then bring up an email and forward that email onto and forward that attachment of that text file. And it would be a lot of steps, right? But what we're going to see today is actually using the command line. You could actually, as long as it's set up in a certain way, to be able to send the email, you could do that whole thing that I just described in one command. You could just write one command out. It would take your information about your users on your system. It would take that, automatically put it into a text file, and then it could send that on to someone else as well. Okay. But even just that first part, without the emailing it, just the creating the text file out of this output from a command, I mean, that alone is already a big deal. It saves us some time and steps. All right. So let's get right into it. So if we, okay. So we need to talk about how commands are done and how the input and output works in a process. Okay. So here we have a kind of a graphical representation and an image representation of what a process looks like. Okay. So you have a process. Now, a process could be a command. It could be something running on the system. Right? But every process is going to have different channels. Okay? So we have the first 3 channels are dedicated, and then there's other channels also over here that we can access as well. But we're going to primarily focus on today on these 3 channels: the channel 0, channel 1, and channel 2. Okay. Now, the standard input is channel 0. So we anything coming into the process So an example of something coming into the process might be a command, like a command line argument. So if we send an argument, an attribute into the command, that's kind of putting it in there, right? So the standard in though is typically going to be coming from the keyboard. So we're sending information into our process. The standard in is normally the keyboard. Okay. So standard output is what comes out of the process. So normally we're going to send that straight to the terminal, straight to the display. So this should sound very familiar. We talked about this in CSE 101. You've probably talked about this in some of your other classes as well. This kind of standard in, my system.in in Java was the keyboard. Standard out, system.out in Java would be the terminal. Okay, the display, the screen, right? Okay, but here we have this other output channel, the standard error. Now, it's channel 2, it's a separate channel, but by default, it's going to go to the same place as the standard out. Okay, by default, it's going to go to the terminal. So basically what that means is, by default, naturally, what's going to happen is a process is going to execute. It's going to take input from the keyboard. It will execute that information. It will execute the command, right? And then what's going to happen is it's going to display stuff to the terminal, both normal output messages such as whatever it is we're trying to display. The example I gave at the beginning of the lecture being if we wanted to list the information about the users from the Etsy password file, for example, that would go to the standard output, that would go to the terminal. Then any error messages that might be generated, if there were error messages that happened, those would also go to the terminal. Okay. Now, what we're going to talk about later in this lecture is what happens if maybe we want to display some information, but the error messages, we don't want to display them. We want to send them to a log file, because as our users are using our system, what might happen is we might want them to see output, but we don't want them to see the errors because it's not that we're hiding it from them, but we want to save it. We want to save that to a file so that we can look at that information later. So if anything that goes to the terminal, it just gets displayed, and as soon as the user closes their window, it's lost, right? So what we might do is say, okay, we want the error messages, though, we might want to send those to a file so that we can have those for later, so that we can be able to take a look at what may have gone wrong, so that we can, so that we can fix any problems that might exist. Okay. So again, these are the channels and file descriptors. So you have the channel number 1 being the standard in. It is considered a read only. So in other words, we cannot write to the keyboard, right? That makes sense, right? The terminal is a write only. It won't read information from the terminal, okay? All right, so what about redirecting that output to a file? Like I talked about, we can redirect the standard error channel to a file. We could redirect the standard output to a file. We can redirect any channel to some file out there, okay? So how can we do that? Okay. Well, when we write this as part of the command, this greater than symbol, it's representing an arrow. It's saying redirect, okay, to a file. Now, we don't write the word file. What we write is we write the file name that we want to send the output to. So if we have this, single greater than symbol and then a file name, what's going to happen is the channel number 1, default channel number 1, standard out, is going to be sent to that file to overwrite it. So you guys remember we talked about opening files for writing versus opening files for appending versus opening files for reading. in previous programming courses. Well, this is like opening a file for writing. It overwrites a file. So if that file already exists, if it already exists, it will be recreated. It'll be all the information that was there will be gone, right? If the file does not exist, it will be created. Okay. All right. So if we use this double greater than symbol, that's what would be the syntax for appending to a file. So what we're going to do here is instead of overwriting the file that exists, we just add to it. So we're adding stuff to the file. One thing I do want to go ahead and stop for a second and say is, as I'm thinking about this, you'll recognize that some of these activities, the writing to a file, appending to a file, this is all stuff that you may have seen as part of your task list if you've looked at that assignment 1 that I posted. Right? What I want to get to is when we're done with this chapter 4, when we're done with this lecture, you will have all the tools that you need to be able to do that first assignment. Okay? So I just want to make sure that you understand that you've already got enough tools in your bag to be able to do a portion of that assignment, but now we're going to give you the rest of the tools that you need. Okay. One thing I also didn't point out here before. If we redirect to this /dev/null, that is an empty file. It's a special file that it doesn't exist, and it's just it's for throwing stuff away. It's the trash bin. Okay, but it's like the trash bin that's it's like not like a recycle bin or a trash bin on a Mac OS where you could get those information back and put it somewhere. No, this is a file that when it goes there, when we send information to there, it's just gone. We can't have it anymore. Okay, so you might want to do that with certain output or certain error messages. You might send those to that trash channel. Okay. All right. So here, this is that syntax that I said we use for redirecting standard out. What if we want to redirect the error channel, the standard error channel? So if we do a 2 in front of that greater symbol, what we're saying is we don't want to redirect channel 1. See, this is the default channel 1. That's why we don't have to put a 1 there. All right. What we want to do is we want to redirect channel 2 to a file. So what's going to happen? Channel 2, whatever channel 2 is pointing at, standard error, right? It's going to send that to our file. Here, if we did channel 2 to that /dev/null, what's going to happen? It's going to send any error messages to that trash can, it's just going to go away. Okay. All right. What if we want to send both standard out and standard error to the same file? Okay, we can do this one of 2 ways. We can either do this. So what happens here is the first part of this, so in this syntax, in this first syntax, the first part of this is saying take channel 1 and send it to a file. Okay, so that makes sense. So standard out is going to our file. Here, what this is saying is take channel 2 and redirect it to channel 1. So kind of what's going, or to the same place as channel 1. So what's kind of going on here is channel 2 is being redirected through to wherever channel 1 is pointing to. Okay. Similar way here, right? This would be for appending to the same file. So we take channel 1, we append to a file. We take channel 2, we send it to channel 1. There's alternative syntax for both of these, this ampersand, greater than, file, right? That is basically saying take my 2 channels and send them to the file. This is saying take my 2 channels and append them to the file. Okay. We'll see in just a moment that one of these syntaxes is preferred, but they both generally operate the same way. Okay. Okay. So here we see the order of redirection is important. Okay. So what this does is this says, like I said, this greater than file says redirect to channel 1 to the output file. Then this says redirect channel 2 to the same place as channel 1. Okay. Okay. Now this order, now you might think, okay, you might think, well, these kind of do the same thing, right? But the problem is that this doesn't this doesn't do the same thing. Because this says first send it to the place where channel 1 is pointing. Well, at this point, when this part of the command is encountered, channel 1 points to the terminal. So it takes channel 2 and it points it to the same place as channel 1, which is the terminal. And then it says, now take channel 1 and send it to the file. Right? So channel 2 is still pointing at the terminal, but now channel 1 is pointing at the file. It is not a once and for all thing. Okay, it's not saying what if I change channel 1 after this, also change channel 2 too. What it's saying is at this point, think of this as when we talked about in programming that there's a sequence, like with instructions, Java lines of code. I don't think you guys have taken assembly yet, but it's the same idea. Any programming language, right? When we execute line 1 first and then line 2, think of this as what happens first. What the first redirection is line 1, the second redirection is line 2. And this is not saying put this in channel 1, and wherever channel 1 goes, then also go there too. What this is saying is redirect channel 2 to the place that channel 1 is currently pointing, the terminal. Now this is saying take channel 1 and only channel 1, standard out, and redirect it to the file. Okay. I want to make sure that's very clear because these two do opposite things. These two very different things. Okay. So because this can be confusing and because this can cause unexpected output and unexpected results, some people prefer to use this instead. So it's easier that way, it's less typing, and it does things in the order we want it to do. Okay. However, some system administrators, just out of experience, okay, I've never been a system administrator. I've always been a programmer, but worked with system administrators before. Out of my experience, system administrators like to be in control. Okay, so if you like to be in control and you like to be the person who everybody has to go through in order to get their passwords changed, in order to get access to certain files and folders on the system, if you want to be the guy or the girl that they have to go through, maybe a system administrator role would be good for you. Okay, but system administrators like to be in control, and what that means sometimes is some system administrators like to say, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm controlling. I'm not using this shorthand. I don't want the system on its own to control things. I want to make sure I know I'm doing this right. So, you know, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. But anyway, I'll probably talk a lot about system. I've worked with a few that have liked to kind of hold that over us, so I may have some stories about system administrators during the rest of this course. Hold on a second. All right, so some examples of output redirection. So basically, some simple tasks can be done using redirection. All right, so if we were to take this date, now remember, I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to stop sharing this screen, Is that it? Okay. Because what I want to do is I want to share the whole thing. The reason why is I want to pull up this whiteboard. Somebody told me that this was a way to get this whiteboard working correctly. You can't see it. I don't see it. Oops. Man. Hey, maybe I'll do this during the break. I thought it was going to be easier than this. The way they described it said it was going to be easier than this. Okay, I'll do that during the break. But for now, let's go back to, because the big problem is that I've tried doing the whiteboard once before. I did the whiteboard in CSE 101 last week, and it didn't record. It didn't show up on the recording. It's like, why do I want the students who watch this video later to see the whiteboard too. So, all right. So during the break, because I do want to show some things. So I want to draw some things for this whiteboard because I think they're better understood through visual diagrams, and so I want to go ahead and show you that. All right. But anyway, back to this. So what I want to show you here is, so what normally happens, so everything before, let's look at everything before this redirection operator. What normally happens when we type date, right? What does it do? It shows us the current date. It has a default format. We looked at some of the formatting of how to show the date in different formats last week. But the date command shows us the current date and time, right? So what we can do is, so when we use that command, let me rephrase this. This is our process. The date command is our process. Now, if we think back to a few pages ago, what happens when a process is executed? It sends to channel 1, to the standard output, it sends the information that it wants to, the output of that process, right? And where does channel 1 go? Where does standard out go? Naturally. Anyone? Oh, somebody answered. Good. That's it. Right, standard out is channel 1. That's right, Barack. But where does it go? Where does it, like, if we didn't change anything, if we didn't redirect, if we didn't change anything, where would standard out go to? Would it go to a file? Would it get thrown away? How would we know what the date was? Where does it go to by default? Right, exactly. It goes to the terminal, which in this case is the screen, right? So what happens, what's going to happen here is we have this redirection operator that's going to take that channel 1, and instead of going to the screen, it's going to send it here. It's going to send that same information that it would have shown to the screen, it's going to send it to that file. Now, if that file exists already, it will be removed, the existing file will be removed, and this one will be saved in its place. If that file doesn't exist already, it will be created. Okay. What will get displayed to the screen? Will the date still be displayed to the screen? And I'll just tell you, oh, somebody's answering. No, right. Good job, Mehmet. So because we redirected that output, because we sent it somewhere else, it cannot go to the screen also. It would be like, in this case, it would be like something got intercepted. Okay, so let's say, let's say I like sports analogies. I love sports. Okay, I'm still learning football, what you guys call football, which makes more sense because you use your feet. What I grew up calling football, we don't use our feet very much, so I'm not really sure why it's called football. But anyway, you're passing the ball from one teammate to another. Okay, I don't know the players, on Talyaspor's team or Fenerbahce, Galatasaray, Beşiktaş. I don't know the players. Okay, but let's say one player is trying to pass it to another person. Okay, to another player on his team. All right, and a player from the opposing team intercepts it. Right, the second player, the teammate, does not get the ball. Also, only one of them gets the ball. Right, so if we think of the output from the date command as being the ball, right? So we're sending the ball. The ball, it was going to go to the screen, to the standard, it is standard out. The channel stays the same, but it was going to go to the screen, but our redirection operator intercepted it. It took the ball, it took the output and sent it to here instead. So the screen doesn't show anything. In fact, after we run this command, we have no way to know if it was successful until we open this file. Okay, because nothing will get displayed to the screen. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. Standard error is still going to the screen. So if there was an error of some kind, which there wouldn't be in a command like this, if standard error was, if there was an error message of some kind, that would get displayed to the screen. But the ball, in this case, the output of the date command, gets sent to this file instead of the screen. Okay. All right. So that was a simple one. Okay. What about this? What happens here? So we look everything up to the redirection operator. This tail command, you guys remember the tail command showing the last some number of lines from a file. Okay. So we've shown the last 100 lines from the file normally would go to the screen, but now it's going to go to this file instead. Okay. Now, I don't think we talked about this cat command before, but it's the concatenate command. So it's going to take this file plus this file plus this file plus this file. And normally what it would do is the cat command would send it out to the screen, okay? Because it's sending the output to channel 1. Okay. So channel 1 gets redirected to here. So now instead of all of this information, the contents of those files being put into the output, into the screen, it's going to all get put into this file instead. Okay. Now we're getting into some more powerful things we can do with this, right? All right. Here, we want to list all hidden and regular file names. Right, so the ls command, we've seen that last week, normally would go to the screen, but now we're redirecting it to this file. Okay, all right, now let's get into some appending. Okay. Now echo, all it does, echo is like the print line command or the printf command in C. It just displays stuff. Right? But again, the output of this goes to channel 1. Channel 1, we are redirecting through appending to this file. Okay. So instead of being displayed, what's going to happen? It's going to get put into this file instead. Okay. And then we can look at the difference of two different files. The diff command looks in this file and finds differences, finds things that are here. Finds things that are here but not here, and we append that tracking changes. So this would be a way to save a file that shows the results of changes made from this file and this file. Okay. So what about redirecting channel 2? Okay. So we're going to, let's see, we're going to find in the Etsy directory. Let's see. Let's see what, I'm trying to think about what to find does. Oh, okay, right. So we're going to look in the Etsy directory. We're going to find something in there, but if this is a normal user, and the reason why this is a thing is because normal users are not granted access to the system directory, the Etsy directory. So if this is not a administrator user, this will generate an error. So if I look for something in this file, in this folder, rather, this is going to generate an error. So what I do is I redirect channel 2 to a file that then tells me, okay, this generated errors, so it should give me a new file with the errors from this command. Okay. All right. Now, okay, this we can cascade these. Now, what I mean by cascade is we can do one channel does one thing and another channel does something else. So here, notice we're sending the output instead of to the screen, because back here the only channel we redirected was channel 2, was the standard error channel. But here we want to redirect, sorry, let me go back. Here we've redirected channel 2, but we didn't redirect channel 1, so channel 1 will still go to the terminal, will still go to the screen. Okay, so here we say, okay, I want to send channel 1 to an output file. I want to send channel 2 to my errors file. So now nothing will get displayed to the screen because I've taken both channels that go to the terminal, both channel 1 and channel 2, I've taken them both and sent them to files out there. Okay. What if I want to take the output and send it to that file, but I want to take the errors and I want to just ignore them? I don't want them to be around anymore. I can send that to that dev null special file. Okay. All right. Here we can take that same thing, and if we wanted to send them both to the same file, I wouldn't have to do two separate redirections. I can just do this. And so remember what this ampersand arrow, this ampersand greater than does, is it sends them both to the same location. Okay. All right. We can take this, we can append this save both. Maybe we have an existing save both file and we want to append to it. We want to add to it instead of overwriting it. We can append to the save both, then we can send channel 2 to where channel 1 points to. So remember, order is important, right? So this should generate errors, is the whole point. We append, but what channel is it that we're appending? We are redirecting channel 1 and appending to this file. Then we're redirecting channel 2 to where channel 1 points to. Where does channel 1 point to? Here. Okay? Clear? Clear? Okay. So actually, this constructing pipelines. I know this is a bit early for our break, and I'm sorry because we actually started a little bit later than I had planned as well. It's a little bit early for our break, but I really want to draw this whole constructing pipelines thing. I really want to use a whiteboard type thing to be able to show this. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna take the break a bit early, but that also means we're gonna come back early. All right, so what we'll do is it's 10:12. I want to give you some time, so 10 minutes. So about 10:22, I will start the recording again, and we'll get into this constructing pipelines, because the idea is basically what happens if we want to take that output of that process, we want to redirect it, we don't want it to go to the screen, right? But we want to send it as the input to another process. Okay. We might want to, so far all we've been seeing is we're taking that output and we send it to a file, or we send it to somewhere else, or we send it to the trash, right? But what happens if we want to take the output of this and we want to send it to the input of another process? Because remember, what's the standard in? Standard in is the keyboard. What happens if we want the input to another process to be the output of a previous process? Okay. So since I took a couple extra minutes to explain kind of reclam, give you a little advertisement for the next hour, let's make it 10:25. So 10:25, come on back, and the recording will start up again. Okay. If you have any questions during the break, you can message the chat group, and we'll talk there. Okay. I'll be here.